All right, gentlemen, welcome to Bob Gerace's Win Her Back in 8 weeks or less, even if she's not talking to you when you start. And today I have a very important topic for you, which is how to stop shooting your marriage in the foot. Now, look, man, we've all been there. Right? I mean, it's like you're trying to be okay, and the marriage is not really great for you either. And so you're trying to make the best of it, and you're trying to keep a positive attitude, and you're not really getting your needs met from her, but you're like, if you can just keep your own stuff together long enough for her to get over whatever it is that she's upset about, that maybe you can start to make some progress in your marriage. And so here you are, and you're barely hanging on by a thread, and you're just trying to heal, and you're just trying to get better, and boom, out of nowhere comes the critical conversation, the you're not good enough again, the you're failing in the marriage again, that you're not making me feel loved again, you're not making me feel held or seen or heard or cherished, or you're messing up in one way or another. And really where that goes to is there's something that's not right about you. From her perspective, there's something that's not enough about you. There's something that's not lovable about you. And when that happens, all of your willpower to try to keep yourself together goes out the window, because something starts rushing up inside of you that is more powerful than you are. It is stronger than you are. And so inside of that space, you end up shooting your marriage in the foot. And you end up causing irreparable damage and harm going forward. And you know that you just drove another nail in the coffin of your marriage. And so the question is, how on earth do you fix that? And that's what we're going to answer today in today's presentation. Like I said, I'm Bob Gerace, and I help professional men like you inside of a marriage that is not working, leading to a life of brother and sister misery, or worse, a devastating divorce. And I've helped thousands of men to turn around that failing marriage. All right, gentlemen, so let's get to it. I'm Bob Gerace, as I just said, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about this monster that lives inside you. We're going to talk about this anger and this rage and what it's doing to your marriage. And so what it's doing to your marriage is it is killing it a day at a time. And every time something about her bothers you, whether she came and rained on your parade or something occurred where you rained on hers, what you're doing is you're actually driving a wedge between yourself and her. And that wedge is getting deeper every time you do it. And it's getting harder and harder to come back from every time you do it. And look, man, every time you do it, you're teaching her to not trust you a little bit more. You're teaching her that she can't feel safe and vulnerable around you a little bit more. And so for you to get what you need from the marriage, and we both know what I'm talking about here, brother, she's got to feel safe, and she's got to feel like she can be vulnerable with you. And so can you understand how this inability to control your anger and get it completely under control, where you are centered, your head, your heart, everything about you is centered, and no matter what she says or doesn't say, no matter what she does or doesn't do, that you are emotionally on center and you cannot be pushed off center. And inside of that space, brother, I'm going to tell you what you get. You get clarity. And I'm going to tell you that clarity is the number one thing that you need to be able to save your marriage. And why is that? Because if you're all up in your head and you're all up in your heart and you're all up and feeling that I'm not good enough and I'm not lovable because of everything that she says and doesn't say and doesn't do, then you can't really understand what you're going to need to do to fix your marriage. This is why in my free presentation, and you'll find that at the top of this page, there's a link on that video that's entitled Win Her Back, so you can go watch that presentation. And that's why in that presentation, I say that the number one thing you've got to do is you've got to release your rage. You've got to release your rage, because when you release your rage, all kinds of magic starts to happen. Number one, you get that clarity, which is so important. Number two, you stop scaring her. Number three, you stop teaching her she can't be vulnerable with you. Look, a lot of guys come to me and they're like, Bob, she shut down. She won't talk to me. I ask her what's wrong. She doesn't want to talk. I say, can't we work on this? She says no. And I'm like, why won't she talk to me? And I'm going to tell you the reason that she won't talk to you, because either she feels it is not safe or she feels it is not productive. Now, if she comes and talks to you about what's not working for her in the marriage and you vomit rage all over her, then she's not going to feel safe. And the other thing is that if even if she does feel safe because your rage is really toned down or whatever, and it's like passive aggressive or whatever, it's not going to be productive, because it's not going to get her anywhere that she wants to go. You've got to release that rage, brother. Until you release that rage, you will never, ever, ever stop shooting your marriage in the foot. So number one, to avoid shooting your marriage in the foot, you've got to stop doing that. You've got to release that rage. Number two, here's the other way we shoot our marriage in the foot. We don't deliver as an elite class husband. Now look, man, you're no different from anyone else, and neither is she. If you got a great car this week, next week it's not so great anymore, is it? And a year from now, and 2 years from now, and 5 years from now. Why? Because we're always looking for the bigger, better deal. We're always wanting to expand our life. And what works today does not work tomorrow. What fits today does not fit tomorrow. Why is that? I'm going to tell you why. Because we're looking for that bigger, better deal. She's looking for that in a husband, brother. She's looking for you to up your man skills, up your husband skills, up your father's skills, up your kingdom skills, king. And so if you're not continually doing that, then what fit for her yesterday is not going to fit as well tomorrow. And you add up 1,000 of those days, and now it doesn't fit 1,000 times more than when you started. Does that make sense? But here's the problem. If you don't release that rage, then you can't have the clarity. We're going back to this clarity of mind. You can't have the clarity to do the work on yourself necessary to get better for her on a daily basis, so that she always feels like she's being led in a positive direction that's expanding by a man who's getting better and becoming more manly, more masculine, more of a leader, more of a husband, more of a father, more of a provider, more of a protector. She wants that. And so if you're all mired in your heart and your mind and your rage and your anger and your pain, you're not going to be able to see it, number one. And what you can see, you're not going to be able to get yourself to do. Now, here's the thing. Let's say you release your rage. And then after you release your rage, what happens? You start getting this clarity, and you start leveling up, and you start becoming this elite class husband. And then what happens? Nothing, man. You know why? Because she is so angry and so hurt and so broken over everything you didn't do and everything you did do, that she sees these changes and she's like, have you ever heard this one? Oh, that's good for your next wife. That'll be great for your next wife. But I'm done. Why is she done? She's done because you have to lead her to a place of forgiveness. You have to lead her to a place of rebuild trust and rebuild connection. You've got to help her to release her rage. You've got to help her to get over the same stuff that I just said you need to get over. And when you do that, then the magic happens. Then she sees how much happier you are, how much more confident you are, how much more emotionally centered you are, how much better of a man you're becoming on a daily basis. And why? Because instead of being like blocked from all of this hurt that she's feeling inside, all of this doubt that she's feeling inside, all of this fear and indecision that she's feeling inside, you're helping her to release all of that. And inside of that space, she begins to feel able to trust, and she begins to feel able to be vulnerable. And now you can start to have some productive conversations. This is why I'm so against marriage counseling. Marriage counseling is so often, let's sit down and teach you how to communicate. My brother, she doesn't want to communicate with the guy who's constantly hurting her and disappointing her and letting her down and breaking her heart and making her feel worse about herself. So you gotta fix that stuff first by releasing your rage, by showing up as the man, the leader, and the king. And then you walk her across that bridge. You create the path from the pit of the pain that she's been living in for all of these years into the paradise that she wants to live in. Does that make sense? And if it makes sense, then here's the final piece. The final piece is that once you get things going in the right direction, just like a car, if you take your hands off the wheel, it's going to end up in the ditch. And so one of the reasons that your marriage is in the ditch is that nobody ever told you that you need to drive it every day, brother. You need to drive your marriage to a happier, safer, more secure place where both of you can feel better about yourselves and be happier and have a space where you have the energy and the desire to want to meet each other's needs and then to have the communication necessary to understand what that means and then to be able to have the clarity of mind to be able to do it. And so you've got to coach your marriage every day. You've got to coach it every day to get it to a better place. And that's the fourth shift that I talk about in that free presentation that I'm going to ask you to go and watch at the end of this video. And so from there, here's the thing. How do you implement all of this stuff as quickly and as painlessly and as accurately as possible? Because the clock is ticking. And you don't know how long it is before she gets her emotional boyfriend or her social media boyfriend or her physical boyfriend, and things go so far that you just can't live with yourself and staying inside that marriage. You don't know how close you are because men get blindsided. Women pretend until they're ready to leave, and then they hit you with the papers. And so there's a short runway, and the clock is ticking, and time is running out. And so the fastest way to get there is to get help, to have somebody to coach you through this process step by step so that you understand every micro step of the process. Somebody who's been through it, somebody who's lived it, and somebody who's helped over 1,000 men to do it like I have. And then what I can do is I can lead you through that process. And if you're interested in what that looks like, then I encourage you to click the link at the top of this page that says the free presentation. Go watch that free presentation. I'll explain it all to you in there. And then get on the phone with me and let's have a conversation about how you can implement this in your marriage and get out of that ow, 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 that island of pain, that pit of pain, cross that path and get into the wow, 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 that island of pleasure and paradise, because it's waiting for you, brother, on the other side of doing this work. And this has been another chapter from the book of Bob.